OSHO, Krishna, the god of joy, not suffering. Krishna reached the pinnacle and absolute depth of religion, yet he never appeared solemn, sorrowful, or burdened. Traditionally, the hallmark of a religious person has been an aura of seriousness, a gloomy disposition, as if they were struggling with life, as if they were in constant rebellion against existence. In contrast, Krishna emerged as one who danced, sang, and laughed. Most earlier religions renounced life in pursuit of asceticism, glorifying sorrow and suffering as supreme virtues. Without Krishna's perspective on religion, most earlier spiritual traditions would appear as solemn, austere, and melancholic. A joyful religion, one that embraces life in its entirety, had not yet been seen. And it is fortunate that those old religions have faded away, along with their old gods and outdated notions. It is said that Jesus never laughed. Perhaps this belief persists because his sorrowful expression, along with the image of his crucified body, became a point of deep fascination for people, most of whom are suffering and miserable themselves. In a profound sense, Mahavira and the Buddha also stood against life. They longed for a different existence in another realm. They championed the spirit's liberation from this world. All religions have divided life into two parts. They accept one while rejecting the other. Krishna, however, embraced life in its entirety. That is why, in India, Krishna is seen as the complete embodiment of the divine, whereas other incarnations remain partial and incomplete. Even Rama is described as not fully complete, while Krishna is regarded as the total manifestation of God. And there is a reason for this belief. Krishna welcomed and celebrated all aspects of life. Krishna and the complete acceptance of life. Albert Schweitzer made a significant observation when evaluating Indian religions. He remarked that Indian spirituality carries a negative attitude toward life. This observation holds true for the majority, except for Krishna. In the context of Krishna, such a statement would be entirely incorrect. Had Schweitzer attempted to understand Krishna, he might not have made that remark. Krishna accepted the body in its totality, not selectively, but in every aspect. Besides Krishna, there was also Zarathustra. It is said that Zarathustra was born laughing, whereas most infants enter the world crying. And only those who are joyful, who embrace laughter, can truly understand Krishna. The old religions taught suppression before God. People were instructed to suppress everything: desires, anger, greed, attachments, believing that only then would they find their soul, only then would they come closer to God. The human struggle against oneself has lasted long enough, and in the thousands of years of this battle, only a handful, names you can count on your fingers, are said to have found God. In that sense, we have lost this battle, for across centuries billions have perished without ever discovering their soul, without ever meeting God. There is undoubtedly a fundamental flaw, a fundamental mistake in the very foundation of such religions. Imagine a gardener who plants 50,000 trees and only one of them bears flowers. We still accept his gardening method, justifying it by saying that at least one tree bloomed. However, we fail to consider that the flowering tree might be an exception, that it bloomed not because of the gardener's methods but despite them. The fact that the remaining 50,000 trees remain barren is enough evidence that the gardener was ineffective. If the Buddha, Mahavira, or Jesus Christ found God without relying on these restrictive and prohibitive religious structures, then nothing proves their success. The success of a religion, or in other words, the success of the gardener, should only be acknowledged when nearly all 50,000 trees bloom, except for a few exceptions. Only then can we blame the trees that did not blossom. Only then can we say that those trees remained barren despite the gardener's efforts. With Freud, humanity reached a new kind of awareness, that repression is wrong, that repression brings nothing but pain and self-pity. If a person fights against themselves, they will only destroy themselves. If my left hand battles my right hand, neither will emerge victorious, but in the end, the battle will ruin me. Though the hands may fight, it is only I, myself, who will be destroyed. This is precisely how humanity has committed self-destruction, by rejecting and suppressing natural instincts and emotions. Krishna seems deeply connected to this new awareness, to this new understanding of human nature revealed through Freud and his discoveries. Krishna opposes repression. He accepts life in all its facets, in all its conditions and colors. He does not choose. He embraces life unconditionally. He does not shun love. He does not flee from women. Even as one who has realized God, he does not turn away from war. He is full of love and compassion, yet he has the courage to embrace battle when no other choice remains. He welcomes nectar but does not fear poison. In truth, one who has realized immortality will not fear death. What worth does nectar have if one is afraid of dying? One who understands the secret of non-violence will not fear violence. What kind of non-violence is it if it trembles before aggression? How can the soul fear the body and run away from it? Krishna embraces duality, the dialectics of life, and thus transcends its oppositions. This transcendence is impossible if one remains in conflict, choosing one part while rejecting the other. True transcendence only happens when one accepts both aspects unconditionally, when one embraces the totality of life. Krishna, the unbounded spirit of freedom. It is truly difficult to understand Krishna. People retreat from the world to seek peace. This is easy to comprehend. But it is far harder to accept that one can find peace amidst the bustling marketplace. It is understandable that a person can attain a pure mind by renouncing attachments and relationships, but it is difficult to grasp that one can remain pure and unbound even while engaged in relationships, that one can live serenely in the very whirlwind of life. It is easy to accept that a candle will not be extinguished if placed in a windless space, but how can one believe that the candle will continue to burn steadily amidst storms and tempests? Even those closest to Krishna failed to fully understand him. Krishna put both his strength and intelligence to the ultimate test. People have tried and discovered that, like a lotus flower, a person can remain untouched and unbound while existing in the midst of relationships. They have realized that one can remain full of love and compassion even on the battlefield, that one can continue to love completely while holding a sword in hand. This paradox is what makes Krishna so difficult to grasp. As a result, those who love and revere him have divided him into fragments, venerating only the aspects they prefer. The poet Surdas sang praises of Krishna as a child, Bal Krishna. In the eyes of Surdas, Krishna never grows up, for there is a danger in the mature Krishna that Surdas could not comprehend. There is no problem if the youthful Krishna playfully flirts with the village girls, but it becomes incomprehensible if the grown Krishna behaves in the same manner. That would be too difficult to understand. Ultimately, we can only understand what lies within our own capacity, within the limits of our perception. We cannot grasp what lies beyond it. Thus, in honoring Krishna, people have selectively chosen different aspects of his life. Perhaps no one is like Krishna. No one has ever accepted and embraced all contradictions, all the apparent paradoxes of life. Day and night, summer and winter, peace and war, love and violence, life and death, all walk hand in hand. This is why Krishna's devotees tend to focus on one particular aspect of his life, that fascinates them while quietly dismissing the rest. On the other hand, Krishna's life accepts no boundaries. His life is not confined by any moral code. It is vast and limitless. Krishna is freedom itself, a boundless freedom. There is no terrain he cannot walk upon, no destination that can make him hesitate, no limit that he cannot surpass. And this freedom, this vastness of Krishna, stems from his experience of self-knowledge. It is the ultimate fruit of enlightenment. Krishna's flute and the cross, the symbolism of joy and suffering. I believe that Krishna's flute stands in complete contrast to the cross of Jesus. It is important to note that the people who crucified Jesus imposed the cross upon him, whereas Krishna chose the flute for himself. One must remember that while the flute represents the intrinsic value, the essence, and the way of life of Krishna, the cross is an external imposition on Christ. It does not represent him. The cross was imposed upon him by others, the Jewish priests and Roman rulers. Krishna played the flute out of love. No one compelled him to do so. He chose to play it. To me, Krishna's flute symbolizes the blessing of life and human gratitude for this grace. Krishna chose joy. He chose blessings. In fact, when life is so magnificent, Krishna could not help but choose happiness, and he expressed that joy through the melody of his flute. Just as an unhappy person does not suffer alone but spreads misery to others, a joyful person is a source of joy for countless others. Thus, when Krishna played the flute, the melody and the blessing it carried were no longer just his. They illuminated the hearts of all who heard it. This happened naturally, effortlessly. If you happen to walk past the cross of Jesus, you will immediately feel sorrow. On the other hand, when you see Krishna dancing by the Yamuna River, your heart will overflow with happiness. Both joy and sorrow, happiness and suffering are contagious. They spread from one person to another, rising and expanding rapidly. A person who chooses to live in misery will see the whole world as miserable. He might even decide to punish the world by choosing unhappiness. Conversely, a person who chooses happiness will wish happiness upon the entire world, bringing music and the song of life to the whole planet. Thus, a happy person is a religious person, while a miserable person is one without faith. I call a person who brings happiness to himself and others a truly religious person. To me, happiness and blessings are essential attributes of true religion. In this sense, Krishna is indeed a religious being, one who constantly radiates joy and blessings. And such a person can bless all of humanity. He is a living grace to the world. But why did the great war of Mahabharata take place in a society where Krishna's flute was the prevailing symbol? The truth is, the war would have happened with or without Krishna's flute. Krishna was not the cause of the Mahabharata war. There is no connection between the flute and the war. However, there is a logical connection between the cross and war. The Mahabharata war occurred despite Krishna's presence and the sound of his flute. This only confirms how deeply we are attached to suffering, how profoundly we are immersed in pain, that even the flute of Krishna could not illuminate our hearts with a moment of joy or a glimmer of hope. The flute continued to play, yet we rushed headlong into the whirlwind of war. The flute could not change our ascetic mindset. Krishna's flute could not become our own. Interestingly, people find it difficult to share happiness but easily share sorrow. You can easily cry with someone who is crying, but it is much harder to laugh with someone who is laughing. You can sympathize with someone whose house is burning down, but you find it difficult to rejoice with someone who has just built a beautiful new home. And this is not without reason. You find it easy to approach the cross of Jesus because it evokes sympathy within you, a heart already filled with suffering and sorrow. In contrast, Krishna's flute provokes jealousy, and we instinctively try to escape from him. The blessing of Krishna stirs envy within us. It does not receive our sympathy. But remember, Krishna is not a warmonger. He is not a ruthless warrior as some so-called peace lovers have falsely claimed. He is a protector of life, a defender of existence, and he will fight for it when necessary. If the great values of life, without which life itself would cease, are in danger, Krishna will stand up to defend them to the end. This does not mean that he favors violence or war, but when there is no other option, he will not shy away from his responsibility. That is why, from the very beginning, Krishna did everything possible to prevent the Mahabharata war. There was no means he did not try to stop the conflict, to save lives, and to preserve peace. But when all his efforts for peace failed, he realized that the stubborn forces of destruction, the forces opposed to truth and righteousness, would not yield to genuine peace. Thus, Krishna was prepared to fight in the name of life and dharma. Krishna, the integration of life and religion. As we can see, for Krishna, life and religion are not two separate things. This is why he can engage in battle as naturally as he dances. The remarkable thing about Krishna is that even when he is on the battlefield, he remains joyful and radiant. He never loses his divine blessings. Meanwhile, there are those who are always sorrowful, even without stepping onto a battlefield. Krishna can be cheerful amidst war because, to him, war is merely a part of life, inseparable from it. As I have mentioned, Krishna does not divide life into black and white, good and evil, as moralists and religious figures often do. He does not automatically assume that war is evil. He teaches that nothing is inherently good or bad in every circumstance. There are situations where poison can act like nectar, and nectar can turn into poison. There are moments when blessings become curses, and curses transform into blessings. Nothing is absolute at all times, in all places, and under all conditions. What is good in one moment may be harmful in another. It is the present moment that determines its nature. Nothing should be judged and predetermined. If you set everything in stone, you will encounter difficulties because life is an ever-flowing stream where everything changes from one moment to the next. That is why Krishna lives in the present. For him, nothing is fixed. Krishna made every effort to prevent war, but when he saw that it was inevitable, he accepted it without hesitation. He did not enter battle with a heavy heart, for he did not believe in doing anything half-heartedly. If war was unavoidable, he would step onto the battlefield with his full heart and mind. He exhausted every means to prevent the war, and when he could no longer stop it, he wholeheartedly participated. At the beginning of the war, as you may know, he had no intention of actively engaging in combat. Krishna told Arjuna that he would not use his divine weapon, the Sudarshan chakra, on the battlefield and would only act as Arjuna's charioteer. Yet, when the moment called for action, he took up the Sudarshan chakra and fought with unparalleled might.